Welcome to DevSecOps, the good, the bad, the ugly. My name is Zach Kennord, and I'm your host. This video cast series is about all things related to DevOps, but we do place an emphasis on making sure security is a part of that practice. So today I have with me Mohan. Mohan, can you introduce yourself, share a little bit about your background and where you're actually tuning in from?
Yeah, thank you, buddy. Good evening. Myself, Mohan. I work at Prudential Insurance as Global Head for Application Security. I work at Singapore.
Yep.
So a little bit of background. So I started as a developer, and then I moved into testing phase. Eventually, from testing, I moved to pen testing. So I was a builder, then a breaker.
Right.
And
yeah.
then, from pen tester, then I realized that, hey, the things are working fine. However, the impact is very small.
Right.
I was working only with one or two teams, and that's it. So if I have to have a good impact in terms of securing the systems, that's where I moved for I think around 4-5 years back. To DevSecOps. And with DevSecOps, I get an opportunity to work with wide variety of development teams across the organization. And the impact there is my org-wide, So I'm like a builder, breaker, and now defender in DevSecOps.
That's great. So in your organization, are they calling the application security initiative, right, to infuse security into the DevOps pipeline? Are they calling that DevSecOps? Is that the terminology that they use?
Yes, indeed. In fact, the team name is Application Security, while in that we are running this DevSecOps program across the globe. We started with Asia. Now we are rolling out to UK, Africa, and very soon in US. So
wow.
Yeah, all across. Yes.
Wow, no, that's great. So, jumping into the DevSecOps related, topic. I mean, what are you passionate about? What are some of the trends that you're seeing these days?
Well, good question. There's a lot of exciting things that are happening, in DevSecOps. So we started with 4 basic traditional DevSecOps tracks, like static analysis, dynamic analysis, then software composition analysis, and of course the container security. So those are kind of traditional DevSecOps tracks, and now we are starting with API, gateway, and security, which is a new track because everything slowly is going towards APIs and microservices. So that's the upcoming area where we are focused on. Apart from that, there are so
it's an area of exposure, right?
Of course,
APIs, right? Yeah, exactly.
So that's the next thing, basically. So we are getting geared to provide good security services to the development teams.
Right.
So that was the 5th track. About 2 peripheral tracks I'll quickly talk about is single view dashboard and enterprise application directory. So single view dashboard is basically if I have, say, 4 tools, right? 4 or 5 tools we have in terms of security, and obviously there will be some other tools that development teams have, right? So as a developer, I need to log into each of those dashboards and then get a feedback in terms of vulnerabilities, what to fix, what to prioritize, etc. So we are actually collating all in one place. We call it as a single view dashboard. And then development teams can log in at one place and they get a full view of where they stand. So the view is not about only application security, but the whole stack. So you have OS level vulnerabilities, you have other component level vulnerabilities, and then the application. So it can be container, it can be application, it can be open source libraries. So the whole stack gets covered in one single shot. So that's going to reduce their time to go at different places and look around those vulnerabilities,
Right.
So
does that where do you give that access? So like when you think about the developer workflow, because that's great. I mean, how do you provide that in other areas, or is it like a link that helps get them to this dashboard? How do you provide feedback when kind of the buzzword out there, shift left, but and so forth?
Yes, that's right. So it's important that it's not just about application alone, because if your stack is vulnerable, your whole system is vulnerable, right? So we basically provide access to the development teams to have a 360 degrees feedback. So earlier days, developers were only supposed to look at developers side only, the application, whatever they develop. But slowly we know the open source libraries have started increasing, taking over almost 60 to 70% of your whole application build, right?
Right.
So we need to look at that. Then you deploy in a container. So obviously we need to look at the container security as well, as well as, the underlying infrastructure, because it's DevOps these days, right? DevSecOps. So developers also are in charge of the operations or the whole stack that they work on, right? So this 360-degree feedback actually gives them a good control, or at least they are aware of it, so that they can prioritize what to fix and what to, prioritize probably a little later based on their risk appetite.
Yeah, that's great. So what's the relationship for you with working with the development teams on these initiatives? Are you trying to, in kind of a second part of that question, are you working together with them to track and quantify how is security impacting? To obviously speed, right, matters. Is there any collaboration in that you can share about?
Yes, of course. So very important question that you asked actually. So creating ecosystem around what we are doing is a very important aspect, to create a very good relationship or bond between the security team and, the development teams.
Right.
So we have got a lot of things, in fact, frequently asked questions. We have got articles on how to, that means because we have a variety of tools, we have created these self-help tutorials where you click here to get this, click there to, further analyze this, etc.
Right.
Then we have 2 to 4 minutes small videos getting, if people are, see, you have a variety of people, right? Some like reading, some like listening, or seeing.
Right.
So we have these small videos basically targeting towards such people who can just have a look at the video and get started working,
Right.
Then we have some tools which give false positives, right? So we have given frequently found false positives, so that if they come across with those, they don't have to even analyze it, just ignore it and move on.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So these are some of the things, we have created to help them, as well as we have created something called as developer portal, where if they have tool related issues, they can just create a ticket and we are tracking it, So we have around 500 developers here in Asia, 500 in US, So it's very, and we are what, 6 plus 1, 7 people. So it's a small number, right? So, and if they start pinging us or if they start emailing us, it is definitely going to miss out some way or the other. So through this developer self-help portal, what we have done is we give them an opportunity to create a ticket, and these tickets get tracked every alternate day. We have stand up, and then we basically look at each of those tickets. So the tickets could be tool related issues, process related questions, or it could be the triage, So once they look at the issues, they may want to understand, hey, whether it is applicable for me or not, So they think that it's false positive. So we analyze, and then we give them the guidance, hey, it is really false positive or it is not applicable to you, And then we move on. Sometimes what happens, like there's a team A and team B, and the CV is reported for their one of the libraries. But the CV, there's one fine print which says, hey, only if you are calling this API, you need to worry about it, otherwise not. So team A is calling that, right? So they are impacted. So they have to fix it. So we guide that in the triage. But in team B's case, we say, okay, since you're not using this API, you can ignore it. It's not applicable for you, So the CV remains same, but the impact for 2 different teams is completely different. So we have this portal for triage where they raise a request and we get, to the next level of discussion with them. Then there are sometimes AppSec consulting requests saying that they want to start a new module or a new feature, but they want assistance just to have a quick review. I have found, these consulting requests very valuable to the development teams in the long run. I remember one in the previous organization, I had such requests. So they came quite early in the requirement phase and they said, hey, this is the MVP we are trying, and why don't you give your inputs? And then we looked at, and first question that I asked was, hey, have you taken your customers on board on this? They said, why do we need to? Because we are getting this feed from government. So I said, with GDPR, I was working in Europe there.
Okay.
So with GDPR, things are different now, so no doubt you're getting the feed from the government, but since you're processing it in a different way, they should be made aware. So there has to be acceptance from the, customer side. So that was quite a revealing thing for them. And there were some other issues that they were assuming it. So we introduced the concept of zero trust. That means, hey, even if you're in the backend, even if the data is coming from your known trusted source or some local files on the server, never trust them. Analyze, validate, and then only you start processing it within your whatever feature that you're developing.
Right.
So these concepts actually, if given at an early stage, saves a lot of time, in terms of development, testing, and production. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's funny that you mentioned that you're a team of 7 where you have practically 1,000 developers.
Yes,
I think at Sonatype we always say 10. You're 100 to 1, right?
Yeah.
Every 100 developers, there's 10 ops people and then 1 security person. So I mean, that's pretty accurate there in that regard. So I guess the last question: what was maybe a challenge that you've experienced in DevSecOps, and it could be whatever, and what did you learn from it?
Well, tools are a smooth cake. These days tools are really good. What challenges us is the people.
Right.
So not all. Most of the developers, once they're made to, they are made to be aware of the vulnerabilities, they understand. But sometimes some section of the development teams do not realize the gravity of it, especially from coming from open source libraries. They think, hey, this is open, this is being used, popular,
Right.
but it's not so.
Right.
So sometimes we have to showcase them.
Right.
And not every time we have enough time because of this, as you said, 1,000 or 110 and 1 ratio. We don't have enough time to showcase every CVE that is possible. So sometimes it takes a little more time to convince them on the vulnerabilities. So the glaring examples like Equifax, and such other open source related breaches, right? So Struts 2 was the reason for Equifax. Had they fixed that, had they patched it, they would have been in a much better position now. So we basically use these examples to convince them. And if they don't get convinced, we have to do small proof of concept for them to ensure that they understand it. But sometimes it takes a lot of time and energy to have those proof of concepts just to prove one small CV gravity. Sometimes, that becomes a challenge for us. It's not because of the technicalities, but because of the time it consumes, and because we have the queue of requests coming from all the 1,000 developers. So
yeah, no, that's great. Well, thanks so much for being willing to come on here and share a little bit about your journey.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you. Thanks a lot.